We're studying the book of Matthew, and we have come to chapter 27. Today we will be looking at chapter 27, verse 27 to 44. Matthew chapter 27, verse 27 to 44. Then the soldier of the governor took Jesus into governor's headquarters, and they gathered the whole battalion before him. And they stripped him and put a scarlet robe on him, and twisting together a crown of thorns, and put it on his head, and put a wreath in his right hand. And kneeling down before him, they mocked him, saying, "Hail, King of Jews!" And they spit on him and took the wreath and struck him on the head. And they have mocked him. When they had mocked him, they stripped him of the robe and put on his own clothes on him and led him away to crucify him. Verse 32. As they went out, they found a man of Cyrene, Simon by name. They compelled this man to carry his cross. And when they came to a place called Golgotha, which means a place of skull, they offered him wine to drink, mixed with gall. But when he tasted it, he would not drink it. And when they had crucified him, they divided his garments among them by casting lots. Then they sat down and kept watching over him there, and over his head, and put the charge against him, which read, "This is Jesus, King of the Jews." Verse 38. Then two robbers who were crucified with him, one on the right and one on the left. And those who passed by derided him, wagging their head, saying, "You who destroyed the temple and rebuilt in 3 days, save yourself. You are the Son of God, come down from the cross." Verse 41. So also the chief priests and the scribes and the elders mocked him, and saying, "He saved others, he cannot save himself. He is the King of Israel, yet let him come down from the cross, and we will believe in him. He trusts in God, let God deliver him now if he desires him. For he said, I'm the Son of God." Verse 44. And the robbers who were crucified with him also reviled him in the same way. Last week, we saw Jesus was tried by the Roman governor Pilate. And Pilate wanted to release him, but the crowd wanted to release Barabbas. So verse 26 in our text today, then he released them Barabbas, and having scourged Jesus, deliver him to be crucified. So today's passage is about the humiliation and the crucifixion of the king. Look at our text today, verse 27. Then the soldier of the governor took Jesus into the governor's headquarters. They gathered the whole battalion before him. What do? The soldier, what do? They strip him and put a scarlet robe on him, and twisting together a crown of thorns, they put on his head and put a wreath on his hand, and kneel before him. They mock him, saying, "Hail, King of Jews!" And they spit on him and took wreath from him and struck him on the head. And when they had mocked him, they stripped him of his robe and put his own clothes on him and led him to be crucified. Notice the third person pronoun they. How many times it appears in this text? It's all about they, what they did to Jesus. It's all about what the soldier did to Jesus. The whole passage is talking about what the soldier did to Jesus. Verse 31. when they had finished, when they had mocked him, meaning they finished mocking him, then they led him to crucify. So this text before us is what they do to him before he was crucified. So basically, they humiliate him, they shame him, they mock him. And then they send him to be crucified, to be nailed on the cross. And verse 38 talks about two robbers. Verse 38 says, the two robbers crucified with him, one on the right, one on the left, and then say nothing. And then the whole chunk of the middle of that from 39 to 43 is talking about the elders, the passers-by, they all humiliate him, they shame him, they mock him. And then come verse 38 and say, these two robbers also did the same way. So basically from 38 onward, it's talking about these two robbers humiliate Jesus also. So our text today, our theme today is really talking about the humiliation and the crucifixion of the king. Remember, we talked about the Matthew last week. We talked about Matthew. Matthew is to present Jesus as a king. That's why we started genealogy. And then we talk about the worship by the Magi. And then we talk about the testing of the king. Then we talk about the manifesto of the king. Then we talk about the power of the king. Then what happened? What is the response? They reject the king. And today we see the king being crucified. But today's text, we see the entire thing about not just crucifixion is not just sending someone to death. Crucifixion is talking about humiliation. Humiliation. To shame him. To mock him. Therefore, you see in this text that a lot of mocking. So we will see that our first point is the mocking of the king. Second point is the mortification of the king. And third one is the mockers. Who are the mockers? I will explain one by one here. So our theme today is about humiliation and the crucifixion of the king. Some of you might say, and I heard this, some of you might say that, hey, Jesus is God. He has no problem with the pain. And especially, he knows he's going to recover from the pain anyway. So how real is Jesus' suffering? How real is Jesus' suffering? Firstly, we must remind ourselves that Jesus is not only God, but he also is a human. So Jesus is a human too. So don't forget the suffering felt by the human side of him is so real. So Jesus is not only God, but he's human. So he can feel the pain. And he did feel the pain. Secondly, if you say that he can recover from it, so what's the problem? Of course, there's the problem. Although you can recover from it, but you still feel the pain. The clear example was last week. I don't know what you know about last week, or last week during the prayer meeting. Our little Jethro provided us a very good example. Jethro had an accident and had a very deep cut on his forehead. And so deep the cut that it needs about 6 stitches, right? 6 stitches. They took him to hospital. End up, they cannot do the dressing on him. And they have to wait until go back in midnight and then do the stitching middle of the night. And so I don't know what, they sleep at 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock. And Chi Peng, our friend, said, he looked at it and said, my hand's nervous, I'm sweating, I don't know how to handle. But our brother Ryan is very calm and cool. He can handle, he do the cleaning up, and then he took him to the hospital. He is, as usual, calm and cool guy. So yes, Jethro did recover from it, right? Of course, he went to Penang and running around so happily. But what do you think? Would he do it again? You know you can recover. Will you do it again? Of course not. Because the pain is so much. The suffering is real and it's excruciating. And I just want to remind you, the cross is not meant to kill the person alone, but the cross is also to humiliate, to shame, and publicly mock the person. It means to torture. It means to make the person suffer. It's to humiliate, to shame him. That is what we see. In fact, we always talk about the cross, but do you know the cross? The purpose of the crucifixion is to publicly shame him so that everyone can see and dare not do it again. And that is, Jesus is not the first one being crucified. In fact, there are thousands. In fact, according to historians, there are already 2,000 to 3,000 people crucified during Jesus' time. So our text today, we will focus on the humiliation and the crucifixion of Jesus Christ. And our outline is the mocking of the king, the mortification of the king. Mortification means to put to death, or crucifixion, or the murder of the king, and then the mocker of the king. So, crucifixion is the climax of redemptive history. It's the focus point of our God's plan of salvation. So God's redeeming work culminates at the cross, where the Lord Jesus Christ bore the sin of the world. Also, at the same time, in crucifixion of Christ, we see the wickedness of men. The execution of Jesus Christ is the vilest expression of evil in human history, the utter depth of man's depravity. The death of Jesus Christ, therefore, is a supreme revelation of the gracious love of God, while also being shown the ultimate expression of sinfulness of men. So from John's Gospel, the crucifixion, primarily John wants to show the perspective of God, the God's perspective on the cross. But Matthew, if you look carefully, Matthew, the primary focus on Matthew is from the perspective of men. Perspective of men. Especially, we know that the two robbers crucified with him on the left and right. Matthew never said one of them being saved, because one of them did say, when you please remember me when you read when the kingdom comes. But Matthew never talked about you. Matthew focused on the cruelty. Matthew focused on the depravity. Matthew focused on the sinfulness of this crucifixion. So crucifixion is considered the ultimate cruel, degrading punishment. In fact, before Romans did that, it can trace back to Persian. Persian already started. Persian, basically today's Iran, already done this. They publicly humiliate the victim by exhibiting their corpses on spike. They display all the dead bodies. And of course, Deuteronomy chapter 21 verse 23 says that anyone who is hung on the pole is under God's curse. But the Romans exchanged this, devising a cruel, inhumane, torturous death on the cross. They make it so hard, make it so slow, make it so excruciating. So dying on the cross is a slow, excruciating death. He let a person, how did a person die on the cross? Is let the person's weight kill the person. He let the person's weight kill the person. And usually the person died on the cross is die of suffocation. Because when you are hanged on the cross or when you are tied on the cross, your body weight weigh you down and you cannot breathe. Only when you leave your hand, if you leave out so that you can breathe, then you drop again. And when you drop, the nail in your wrist will tear, or the nail will tear your leg. You want to kick, you have to kick, but you are kicking on the nail that you are kneeling on so that you cannot come out and breathe and then let down and die and let down again. It's the weight. So let me ask you. In fact, I just want, and I was tempted to do this experiment. I'm not going to do it. I want you to hold your breath and see how long you can hold. How long can you hold your breath? Not breathe. How long? What's the longest? I don't know. But usually it's 1 to 2 minutes. Some people are strong, maybe 3 minutes, right? So if you hang on the cross, in 2 minutes, you need to air, you kick, and then go down. And in 2 minutes, let's say 2 minutes, you have to kick to breathe. 60 minutes, you have to kick 30 times. And a person usually hang on the cross for 3 to 5 days. And how many times do you think he has to kick? And kick until he have no leg, no strength to kick. He cannot kick himself up to take in the breath. It's his weight that he let go of his oxygen. He trade his oxygen for his body weight. And then he died of suffocation. That's how he died. So on the cross, it is a very excruciating, a very slow, very torturous death. A very cruel, very inhumane. And for quicker, if you want a victim to die quickly, you basically nail him or you break his leg so that he bled. He will bleed. He will bleed to death as well. So if you want to do and not only that, usually you will make the situation a lot worse by scorching him, so that the blood, the skin exposed, and this is what happened. And in fact, this is so degrading that no Roman citizen should be crucified unless by the direct edict of Caesar. So Roman citizen, if you are a Roman citizen, you should not be crucified unless it's by Caesar. And usually, who are the victims that put on the cross are the political rebel, insurgents. So crucifixion is for Jew to Roman, they will not do this thing unless you upset the Caesar. But for Jew, crucifixion only meant people outside the covenant. It's a cursed people, and it can be done only outside Jerusalem. So the cross is so degrading. It's supposed to be a curse. But Jesus Christ turned the curse into a blessing. So today we see that many of Christians, especially the ladies, put a cross on top. Do you know it's a symbol of curse? But how did it become a blessing? What changed the whole culture? I mean, we know that it's so hard to change the culture, and then you want to change the entire world view on one of this curse. Is Jesus Christ changed the whole thing into a blessing. That is, on Jesus Christ, because he died on the cross, he changed the curse into a blessing by giving life. And this is what happened. And in fact, what you see today on this text is also a many prophecy that fulfill. A lot of this prophecy has been prophesied, especially Psalm 22 or Psalm 69. But I would like to show you Isaiah 53. Isaiah 53 say that what Jesus Christ gone through. Jesus Christ, Isaiah 53, chapter 53, verse 3 say this. He was despised and rejected by men, a man of sorrow and acquainted with grief. As one from whom men hide their faces, and he was despised and esteemed not. If you are despised by people, do remember our Lord Jesus Christ. He knows. He experienced it. He is with you. He is at the bottom of the valley. He knows how you feel. And he continues, surely he bore our grief and he carried our sorrow. He not only understands, but he bore our grief and he carried our sorrow. Yet we esteem him stricken, smitten by God, and afflicted. We thought this is God's punishment, but why did he do that? But he was pierced for our transgression. You see here, of course, on the cross, there are two ways to do it. One is by tidying up, but in this case, he was pierced. And he was crushed for our iniquity. Upon him, the chastisement that brought us peace. He received the chastisement, he received the punishment, and because of his punishment, we receive peace. And with his wounds, we are healed. So today we are pondering what Jesus Christ gone through on the cross, and I want you to bear in mind what he brought us. He brought us peace, and he brought us healing. And through what means? Through his own suffering. We are like sheep gone astray. We have turned, every one of us, we have turned to his own way. And the Lord lay on him the iniquity of all of us all. So we go our own way, we do our own thing. God created us. We go and do everything what we like to do. We despise the Creator God. We do things the way we want to do it. And we continue to do this thing. And today you see that we have hard time. We have hard time with rules and laws. We have hard time to obey. Because we are so used to rebellious lifestyle. Even the simplest rule and laws, even by our parents, even by our governor, even by our government, we will not follow. And that is just revelation of the sins that we have. 1 Peter quote the same thing. He says this. 1 Peter 2:23 say this. When he was reviled, he did not revile in return. When he suffered, he did not threaten, but continued entrusting himself to the one who judges justly. He himself bore our sin in his body on the tree, that we might die to sin and live to righteousness. By his wounds we have been healed. So this is what it means. You know, sometimes we read all this scripture, we thought we know. But do we really know? We really understand? Sometimes we know head knowledge, but the heart don't really understand, don't really feel, don't really identify, don't really appreciate what is going through. And today's text, let us have a glimpse of what Jesus gone through. So our theme today is the humiliation. Yes, it's about crucifixion, but more so about the humiliation, the shaming, the cruel torture, the inhuman treatment that he received. So we will be looking at our first point, the mocking of the king, the mocking of king. Let us look at our text today, verse 27. Then the soldier of the governor took Jesus into the governor's headquarters, and they gathered the whole battalion before him. And that is the background. That is the background. The verdict has been given, crucifixion. And the soldier of the governor took Jesus into the governor's headquarters, and then they put in front of the whole battalion, the whole cohort, the whole battalion. Over here, very scholar basically say that there's probably about 600 to 1,000 men. As we already studied this before. The word means about 600 to 1,000 men. And they basically put him in front of the whole battalion, and they basically humiliate him. They humiliate him. You look at verse 28. They strip him. They strip him. They take out his clothes, become naked. In fact, people who are crucified on the cross usually are naked. It's just to shame him. And then they put a scarlet robe on him and twisting together a crown of thorns and put it in his head and put a wreath on his right hand and kneeling before him, and they mock him. The key is they mock him. So the scarlet, they basically put the scarlet robe, the crown, the wreath. Scarlet robe is almost symbolized or almost signify the royalty. They put, actually it's basically what the soldiers are wearing. They put it on him, and then they put a wreath on him. It's just like the scepter of the king. And then they use the thorns, they put it together, and they put it on the head to signify he's the king. That is a typical treatment of the soldier who treat the rebel, who go political. If you want to go against the Roman government, that's how they do it. In fact, they will just play a cruel game and condemn the prisoner, especially the revolutionary brigand. The prisoner dress up like a basket king and they basically do a game piece. They probably throw a dice and then rotate who will treat the king, the so-called king, and then they basically hold verbal, physical abuse to mock the king. So they just want to humiliate him. The throne, the crown of thorns, the thorn could be a thorn bush. But there are people who suggest that this could be a dead palm. If it's a dead palm, it's probably 12 inches long, and it's ironical because this is the dead palm that they used to hail Jesus when he entered Jerusalem. And the wreath that they give him on the hand is really something that to signify that is a scepter, the king, the authority of the king. And what they do, verse 30, they spit on him. Of course, in the Eastern culture, you spitting on somebody, if you see shows, if they are angry, somebody will spit on the ground. But they spit on the face is really a humiliating thing to do in front of him. And in fact, the grammar here is imperfect tense, meaning they repeatedly spitting and hitting him. They take the wreath, meaning they take the scepter, and then hit him on the head and struck him on the head. So you can see this repeatedly. And why are they doing all these things? This is before crucifixion. Basically, what they're doing is to mock him. This to humiliate him, to shame him. And then the second point is I call mortification or crucifixion, basically, because if you look at verse 31, they led him to be crucified. And why use the word mortification? Of course, the M is there, but basically come from Romans chapter 8:13. 8:13, in fact, this word has been used. If it's used in the King James, he said, "For if ye live after flesh, ye shall die. But if ye through the Spirit do mortify the deed of the body, ye shall live." The word mortify is the same word ESV used to describe put to death. In fact, this is an ancient word. Nowadays, they don't use this unless you study John Frame or Jonathan Edwards, and you will see this word used. The original word means to put to death. They put to death Jesus Christ. Basically, they put to death Jesus Christ. Basically, it's talking about crucifixion. They lead him to kneel on the cross. Let's look at verse 32. Verse 32. As they went out, they found a man, Cyrene, Simon by name. They compelled this man to carry his cross. And when they came to a place called Golgotha, means a skull, they offered him wine to drink mixed with gall, and when he tasted, he would not drink it. And then when they had crucified him, they divide their garments among them. We'll just stop there for a while. Criminals are condemned to die. It's customary for them to carry their own cross. Carry their own cross to the scene of crucifixion. And this cross is usually a very heavy cross piece. And the cross usually weighs about 30 to 50 pounds. It's about 20 to 30 kg. And they were carried, but Jesus has been scorched before, and meaning his skin has been open up and wound, and he probably is too weak for him to carry the cross. That's why, because of the blood loss, because of hard to carry, the skin, the muscle, and the internal organ probably already hurt. So they can force this man. They just happen to see this man passes by, and this Cyrene, man from Cyrene, this Cyrene is basically the capital of Roman province called Cyrenaica, and it's basically the modern Libya in North Africa. So Simon from Cyrene, he basically forced this man to carry the cross. But of course, tradition tells us that this Simon basically become the disciple of Jesus Christ. But of course, it's not in the text. But this is from tradition. So he carried Jesus' cross. That shows Jesus is so weak that he cannot carry his own cross. Verse 33 says, when they came to a place called Golgotha, which means it's a place of skull. So Golgotha basically is the Greek transliteration of Hebrew or Aramaic word for skull. And this skull is basically, some question is likely this is a skull-like rock formation, a place. But of course, historically they cannot find this place. But likelihood is from they call this presently they call this Gordon's Calvary or the Garden's Tomb. That if you go to the site, you probably see this thing, and that is the word, Latin word for skull is Calvaria. Calvaria, that's where we get the word Calvary. So they brought him outside. Basically, they are not supposed to kill inside the Jerusalem. They have to do it outside because they are cursed. So they leave it outside of Jerusalem, probably in the west side. In verse 34, they offer him a drink made with gall. Gall is a bitter herb. And in rabbinical tradition, they indicate that a prisoner about to be executed, they usually give him some wine, contain some frankincense to numb the senses. And Jesus tasted it and Jesus rejected it. Meaning Jesus will be taken in full pain, full shame, full suffering. So basically, then they crucify him. As I mentioned to you, crucifixion is a very cruel and unusual punishment. And victims usually die 3 to 5 agonizing days by thirst, by exhaustion, by exposure. Remember, this is Middle East. Daytime, during the noon time, is very, very hot. 40 degrees, 50 degrees, I don't know. But nighttime is very, very cold. This is in the desert, in the Middle East. So basically, they put him there, and then they will either nail that person or tie the person on the crossbeam, and after nailing him on the ground, they will lift him up. So it's basically on the ground, kneel, and then lift him up. The skin, the bone will start tearing, and then they will put it up there, and they will be hanging hanging down. And this is what usually happens. And the cross, there are 4 different types of cross, or different types of crucifixion. One is pole-like, meaning just a pole. They just tie the person on the pole and let him die there. The next one is the X, and then another third one is the T type. Then of course the last one is the traditional type, is like a plus point. And Jesus very likely died on this plus point, the traditional, because why? There is a sign that put on top of him, saying this is the King of Jews. So traditional, when he was peeled on the side, and then there's a pole that put it on him, and this is what likely his use happened to Jesus Christ. So verse 35 says, when they crucified him, then they divide his garment. And this is basically a fulfillment of Jesus' Psalms, saying that they will cast lot and divide the garment. My question is this: Jesus wear on what Jesus wear is, of course, it's not the most expensive clothing from Paris, right? So why they want to cast lot for this? It's not they want the clothing. It's just they're having fun. Because watching a crucifixion, watching a man die on crucifixion take 3 to 5 days is so bored. So what they do is they have fun with this thing. So they just trying to kill time and they play the game. So this is like mockery upon mockery. So usually the crucifixion, they basically they throw dice just to pass time. And so after being done, they will sit there and watch. And why do they sit there and watch? Of course, in case there's somebody come and take them down or release them. So this is what happened. And of course, verse 37 say that above his head say there's a sign saying, "This is Jesus, the King of Jews," written by Pilate. And basically, it's a mockery that in 3 different languages. So this is what we see that in this text, how Jesus died. Of course, all these are historical background that we can do. A lot of this has been discovered by archaeologists in recent years, and of course by medical doctor studying how a person died on the crucifixion. So our first point is the mocking, second point is mortification, and last point is the mockers. The mockers. Look at verse 38. In fact, before verse 38, I will highlight to you that there are 4 different categories of mockers there. First of all, is who mocked Jesus at that time? Of course, the soldier. In fact, if you look at the whole text, it's talking about the soldier, they. It's about how they treat Jesus. So the whole text, in fact, there are not so much information on the crucifixion itself, but a lot of information about how they humiliate Jesus. And why Matthew spends so many verses on that is to show Jesus outer humiliated shame on the cross. So the first group is soldiers, second group is the passers-by. You look at verse 38. Let me look at verse 38. Then the 2 robbers were crucified with him, one on the right and one on the left. Very likely these 2 robbers are also political insurgents. Basically, they are rebels. So therefore, they are crucified together with Jesus Christ. And those who passes by derided him, wedging his head. So here he's talking about, so we have the soldier, we have the robber, we have the passers-by. And then they were saying, who would destroy the temple and be rebuilt in 3 days? Save yourself. You said they are basically mocking him again. If you're the Son of God, come down from the cross. Again, they are shaming him. They are being sarcastic. And also, now verse 41 says, there's another group called the chief priest, the scribe, and the elder. They also mock him and saying, you save your others, you cannot save yourself. If you are king of Jews, come down and we'll believe you. You trust God, let God deliver you. If you're the Son of God, sure. And then verse 44, and the robber who crucified with him also reviled him in the same way. In fact, the first verse 38 say nothing about the robber. And then you go to verse 44, the 2 robbers then appear again. So why he's want to talk about these 2 robbers is just to show that the robbers also humiliate, revile, shame, mock Jesus. So there are 4 groups: the soldiers, the robber, the passers-by, and the religious leader. And all these people stop mocking Jesus. So comes to conclusion. Why is this text here? In fact, my question is more than why is this text here. My question is, why did Jesus want to do that? You know, sometimes we find that, you want to do something or you find it troublesome. You probably don't do it. But Jesus go through so many things. He came down from heaven, and he came down and live a life of a man and do all these things at the end to be crucified, at the end to be rejected and crucified. Why? He is God. He should know. Then why did he still want to do this? Why did Jesus want to do this? Why do he, at the end of the day, he had to feel the pain, go through the suffering, and has to be shamed, humiliated, reviled, and yet he said nothing? Remember last week we talked about this. Why did he say nothing? Why did he do all these things? Why did he go through the trouble so that to be rejected? Why? That is something that I think we need to think. Of course, this text is all about facts, how Jesus suffered. And I do not know how much we can identify, how much we can feel. In fact, maybe in our devotion, we should sit down and feel. A long time ago, I was in America, a preacher preached a text about crucifixion, and what he did is when we entered the church, everybody was given an envelope and a nail, and the nail is 3 inches long. And in fact, I'm very tempted every time I preach on the crucifixion, I want to give you a nail of 3 inches long. But of course, the nail I give you will be a very clean one. Maybe it's corrosion free. But of course, Jesus used the nail is rusty one. And then you just feel the nail and whether it cuts, and just feel what Jesus feels. But physical pain is one thing. What about emotional pain? What about emotional pain? And we'll see more of this pain coming the weeks to come. And did you feel, and why did Jesus want to do this? Why do he want to be rejected? And why does he want to take the pain this way? And remember what before the crucifixion, he prayed. And in his prayer, his sweat dropped like blood. Have you ever prayed till the sweat dropped like blood? It's the fear, the tribulation, the trembling, the fear, the trembling, and the pain is real. Why? 2 Corinthians chapter 5 says, for our sake, he made him to be sin who knew no sin. It is because of us he wants to save us. As a father, as a loved one who wants to save you of all the pain, of all the punishment, he's willing to go extra mile so that you are free of pain, you are being rescued from your situation, rescued from your issue, rescued from your problem, rescued from sin, rescued from punishment. He made him sin who knew no sin. Jesus is sinless, yet he bare the sin for us, so that in him we might become the righteousness of God. So today we only glimpse what happened there. Let me recap what we said in the beginning. In Isaiah, he was despised and rejected by men. He became a man of sorrows, acquainted with grief. Are you acquainted with grief? Are you in pain? Your pain, my pain, nothing to compare with Jesus' pain. And he did nothing wrong. And as one from whom men hide their face, people despise, they don't want to see you. They just want to see you. He was despised and he was esteemed not. Today, everybody wants self-esteem. Everyone wants to be esteemed. But nobody esteemed Jesus Christ. Surely he bore our griefs. Surely he carried our sorrows. Yet we esteem him stricken, smitten by God. We thought he is done by God because God punished him. It's none of my problem. But he was pierced for our transgression. He was crushed for our iniquity. Upon him was the chastisement that brought us peace. And with his wound, we are healed. And we are like sheep have gone astray. We have turned. Every one of us, we have turned into our own way. And the Lord laid on him the iniquity of us all. Why did Jesus do that? Why did he want to feel the pain? Why did he want to take all this? That's why, again, I remind you, 1 Peter 2 said, when he was reviled, he did not revile in return. When he suffered, he did not threaten, not continue entrusting himself to the Lord who judged justly. He himself bore our sins in his body on the tree, that we might die to sin and live to righteousness. By his wound, you have been healed. On that note, I will close. And it's very appropriate at this point, we will remember our Lord in Holy Communion. I will invite